Chief, and they had a significant rain event after a really devastating fire season in Oroville Dam. For a moment, people thought that wasn't going to go very well, and Butte County Sheriff's Office led the evacuation. I think probably one of the, if not the largest, one of the largest evacuations of people in short order to get everybody out of the way of that. And there's a lot of praise given to the Sheriff's Office, the leadership in navigating a very complicated process. Not that much later, we're back up there for the campfire, and I know a lot of you guys were there. And again, I was incredibly impressed with the sheriff's leadership and particularly his team as well that navigated what was the largest search in California state history and maybe in national history. And so with that, I'd like to invite our keynote speaker to come up, Sheriff Corey Honey.
Good evening, everybody. I really want to thank you. It is actually an incredible honor to be here this evening. My department, my county has been through so much, and we've been helped by so many people, including many of you here. As you know from the introduction, my name is Corey Honey, and I am the sheriff and coroner of Butte County. And I know many of you are well acquainted with Butte County. Probably have spent more time than you care to admit up in our neck of the woods. As I understand it, there are nearly 500 attendees here from search and rescue teams from throughout the state of California, which I think is a remarkable thing. I think that's a testament to the professionalism and commitment that you all have to serving your communities. A number of the members from my search and rescue team, as well as our Comm Reserve and our local animal rescue, North Valley Animal Disaster Rescue Group, are here. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them in front of all of their peers and express my sincere gratitude for their dedication and professionalism and their commitment to the residents of Butte County. I probably don't get to say this as much as I would like to, but thank you all very, very much for what you do for the citizens of Butte County, and I'm glad I can tell you that in front of your peers. I am fortunate to have a great search and rescue team, and they're important members of the Butte County Sheriff's Office team. They, like many of you, respond to calls at all hours of the night, on weekends and holidays, and any time in between. I know every time they go out, we dispatch our search and rescue volunteers using a system called Code Red, which sends out a page. And every time they get deployed, my phone goes off. Much to the chagrin of my wife, who sometimes wonders why it's going off in the middle of the night. But nonetheless, every time it does, I know you're going out there, and I know that you're very capable, very competent. I rest easy knowing that you're on the job. But I do know you're out there, and I certainly do appreciate it. I'm continually impressed with the dedication and expertise of not only our search and rescue members, but all of the search and rescue members from throughout the state of California that I've had the opportunity to encounter during my tenure as sheriff. Now, that expertise takes time to develop and requires ongoing training, like the type of training that you're receiving here. As our search and rescue captain, Dan Newman, recently remarked to me, it takes more than a pickup truck and a good rope to be a member of the search and rescue, which summarizes, I think, how far this has all come, right? What you're doing here is so incredibly technical and complex and so important. I don't think that people in the general community have a real understanding of the level of professionalism that you all have and how blessed we are in the state of California to have that expertise. An expertise held by and large, a group of citizens who do it on a volunteer basis, right, who come out and do it for free. It's clear that more and more is being asked of public safety professionals, which includes members of our search and rescue teams throughout the state. And we're continually being asked to respond to emergencies and disasters where lives hang in the balance. It requires a varied and complex skill set to manage, coordinate, and execute those responses. Now, the Butte County Sheriff's Office and members of our search and rescue team are no strangers to calls of that nature. From the Oroville Dam spillway evacuation in 2017, which impacted nearly 180,000 North State residents, to the Camp Fire in 2018, and all the small-scale emergencies in between, our team and many of you have rushed into harm's way to help fulfill the mission of the Sheriff's Office and protect our community from all hazards. Undoubtedly, the greatest test came to us on the morning of November 8th, 2018, when a downed power line sparked what came to be known as the Camp Fire. Now, to date, the 2018 Camp Fire stands as the deadliest and most destructive fire in the history of California. In total, the Camp Fire consumed more than 155 acres, destroyed or damaged more than 18,000 structures. It resulted in the evacuation of nearly 50,000 people and, regrettably, the deaths of 85 citizens of Butte County. It moved at a ferocious pace. It consumed 83,000 acres within the first 15 hours. And although it did not march in a steady progression, it jumped because of embers that were flying through the air. The fact of the matter is that averages 1.5 acres per second. Think about that for a moment. Now, I'm not trying to be dramatic when I say this, but during the first several hours of the fire, it seemed to me like the world was going to end. And I remember thinking, perhaps as somewhat of a defense mechanism, that if we can just make it through today alive, we're going to be okay. Now, that was a little naive because we weren't okay, and to some degree, we're still not okay. We're still working through all of that. There was a constant struggle that day and for the days that preceded to gain situational awareness. And the fact is, there weren't enough firefighters or cops in Butte County to stop that fire or to coordinate the evacuation at its inception. And I am thankful to God for California's mutual aid system and the fact that when you're in trouble as a sheriff, all you need to do is reach out and call for help, and your counterparts send it. As that fire began, it was running away from us before we even knew we were in a race. The Camp Fire was a disaster that impacted the lives of everyone living in Butte County that day and all of the first responders and law enforcement personnel who rushed in to aid in that evacuation, including many of you. Many members of law enforcement profession, including our search and rescue members, worked to protect the communities that they're sworn to serve, while their own homes burned and the safety of their families was in peril. After the initial evacuation, law enforcement personnel were tasked with securing the evacuated areas ravaged by the fire, a task that continued long after the fire was extinguished. It was interesting to me as the days went on, and I would give my 6 o'clock press briefing to the citizens of Butte County. Many of you were probably still out working while I was doing that. It occurred to me that from November 8th, every single day that passed, the firefighters kept being able to give better and better news, right? They kept being able to talk about how the fire was being more and more contained. But for us, it seemed as though every single day brought bad news. It got worse and worse. And certainly for those of you who understand what it takes to evacuate a community, especially a community of the size that we were dealing with, some 50,000 people, evacuating that many people facing that kind of threat is a monumental task. But I would submit to you that securing the evacuated area and then repopulating that area is probably even more difficult task when you understand how frustrated people can become because they're not allowed back into their residences. In addition to that, law enforcement personnel were tasked with locating thousands of people who were reported missing by panic-stricken friends and family. And if you followed that particular aspect of it, that was also a very daunting and worrisome task. In the minutes and hours after the inception of the fire, our dispatch center was flooded with hundreds and hundreds of calls people who were looking for loved ones. At one point, the list of people that we were looking for topped 3,800 people. And I am pleased to say that through the efforts of all of the mutual aid that came to help us with that, we have located and accounted for all of those people except for one. And we're not even confident that she was in the Paradise area on the day of the fire. I note that the last one that we located, we were down to 2 until a couple of weeks ago. I went into my detective bureau and I said, guys, I need you to work on this. We need to find these people. And one of my detectives, a couple of days later, was driving down the road and he saw one of the 2 remaining females walking down the road. And he got out and he asked her name. And she said, why? He said, well, we've been looking for you. Is this you? And she said, well, reluctantly admitted that it was her. And he said, you know that we've been looking for you. I mean, how could she not? Is she living under a damn rock, for God's sakes? And she did. She admitted that she knew that we had been looking for her, but she thought that she had a warrant for her arrest and had spent time hiding from us. She went so far as to actually dye her hair for a period of time. I think that illustrates sometimes the difficulties that we face when you deal with human beings. But at any rate, we have one left, but it's a remarkable thing that we were able to ultimately locate that many people who were unaccounted for as a result of that fire. In addition to those things, of course, and I think many of you are probably involved in this, law enforcement personnel, including search and rescue, but including some of our other partners, for example, for our forensic anthropologists from California State University, Chico, and I think they're here tonight, a few of them anyway. We are, I heard that, we are, that's right. I think had one of the most difficult tasks, the grim task of searching more than 18,000 locations in an effort to locate and recover the remains of people who perished in the fire. And for those of you who are part of that, you certainly know that that was no easy task. I mean, that resulted in, or required you to go through the ash and rubble and literally sift through ash looking for small pieces of charred bone. Something that very, very few people in this world have ever had to experience. But the fact that that was accomplished in such a short period of time, and the fact that the remains of those individuals, as tragic as it was that they were lost, have been recovered, and now we have the ability to return those remains to their loved ones, will certainly bring closure to those families. It is, I think, unprecedented, that response, and your part of it was hugely important. And although it was a very, very difficult task, an unpleasant task, I hope that you know how proud I am of all of you, and I hope you also have a sense of pride for what you did and a sense of accomplishment for what you did. In the backdrop of all of that response to the public, my office was also trying to coordinate and assist those members of our department and other public safety personnel from within Butte County who lost their homes. We had a good number of the members of our department who were displaced, who lost their homes. Some of them are here tonight. And it was an important part of our response that the public probably doesn't know about, but we knew early on that if we didn't immediately begin to take steps to take care of our people, they couldn't keep doing the job to take care of our community. That's an ongoing effort, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Now, all of these incredible things that were done, these efforts in large part, were certainly led by members of my department, including volunteers affiliated with my department. But it also, we received incredible support from law enforcement mutual aid from throughout the state of California, which you are all part of. In the face of an overwhelming tragedy, the law enforcement response was unprecedented, it was heroic, and it was inspiring. And I will tell you that as I reflected back on the response, and I've spent a lot of time reflecting on the response. I've come to believe that although it was not perfect, it was outstanding. It was outstanding, and I would dare to say that perhaps couldn't have been better given what we were facing and the resources we had. When you look at disasters that occur in other parts of the country, I don't think they can hold a candle to what we can do here in California through our mutual aid system and through our professionalism, what we do and what we bring to the table, and certainly you guys are a big, big part of that. The credit, of course, to that outstanding response goes to my staff and you and all of the law enforcement personnel who rushed in to assist us. It is humbling when you're the sheriff of a county facing a disaster like that to call for help and to have that help pour in upon you. There really aren't any words to express how grateful I am. I am eternally thankful for the assistance provided by numerous sheriff's offices, police departments, as well as state and federal law enforcement agencies who sent personnel and resources to our assistance. And when I say that to you, I'll tell you that it doesn't seem like enough. To say thank you, frankly, seems inadequate, but that's the best I can do. And I hope that you understand how grateful I am and how indebted I feel to all of you. The fact is, without you, we could not have done what we did. Now, as I look forward, I realize that we must continually work to enhance our capabilities to respond to the threats of the future. And the way things seem to be going, there'll be plenty of threats for us to respond to. Now, certainly the lessons that we learned from the campfire, and we've learned many of them, they will enhance our future responses. And search and rescue teams from throughout the state of California will play a vital role in those responses. That's why it's important that you continue to enhance your skill set and continue to improve your capability, because the citizens of the state are dependent upon you. With that, though, I want to talk about another issue that has really become kind of near and dear to my heart as this year has marched on, especially as we approach the anniversary of the campfire. So in addition to operational preparedness, we have to be cognizant of the emotional trauma that inevitably accompanies responses to horrific and life-threatening incidents. We have to be proactive about addressing and mitigating those impacts, which requires us to destigmatize the idea or concept of emotional trauma in first responders and remove barriers to treatment. The fact is, given what we deal with and what we see, emotional trauma is almost a certainty. If we don't take care of our first responders, the safety of our communities is in peril. You know, it occurs to me in the law enforcement side, we spend a lot of time training our people how to deal with a gunfight. We train our people how to deal with physical fights. And certainly the specter of all of that is a real possibility. It can be a very dangerous job. And it's important that we train our people to deal with those kinds of threats. But the fact is, many law enforcement officers fortunately go through their entire career without ever having to become involved in a gunfight. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't continue to train that, but it has occurred to me that we train for something that in the vast majority of cases is unlikely to actually happen, but we spend almost no time training our people to deal with emotional trauma, which is going to happen. It will inevitably happen, and so we have to be much, much better about that. I'm serious when I talk about the fact that if we don't, we are putting the citizens of Butte County, or the citizens of the state of California, at risk, because if our first responders aren't prepared, aren't able to deal with this, aren't in a good state, they can't do the job that we want them to do to protect the community. There's been a lot of work done in my department that I'm proud of. I know that we're not alone. we have been spending a lot of time over the course of the last year talking about health and wellness and mental wellness and dealing with the trauma associated with not only the campfire but the day-to-day cumulative trauma that people in this career field face. And I am optimistic that we can turn the corner on this and really start to change the culture of law enforcement. Now, you all know, because many of you responded, the campfire was an absolutely devastating event, something that I certainly wouldn't ever want to have to live through again. I wouldn't wish it upon you. But I am a guy who spends a lot of time looking for the silver lining in adversity, in any crisis or situation that we're getting our asses handed to us in. I'm always looking for the opportunity or the silver lining. And I've come to believe that one of the silver linings of the campfire is it is a common experience for so many of us. We all went through that, and we were all impacted to one degree or another. We all suffered some emotional trauma as a result of that. And because it's a collective experience, because we're all in this together, it's okay to admit that, and it's okay for us to move forward and talk about better ways to deal with that. And if the campfire will help us change our culture in that way and help us bring us closer to being able to deal with trauma in an effective way, then that's one thing that came of the campfire that will be positive. As I wrap up my comments, I want to circle back to all of you. I want to reiterate my gratitude for the work that you do. I think I speak for the other sheriffs of California, and two of my colleagues are here tonight, when I say that you're a vital part of our organizations. You're vital parts of our team. And without you, we could not effectively fulfill the entirety of our mission. Again, I say thank you, recognizing that those words probably aren't adequate, but again, it's the best I have. It has been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you this evening. Thank you again for all that you do. I hope the rest of your training is incredible, and I appreciate everything. Good night. I am the one that's been standing in front of you, so let me do that.